Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Winning Edge, real conversations with SMB sales leaders who carry the number, make the call, and live with the outcome. My guest today is a good old Irish boy, Sean Patrick Fleming. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well, Skip. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on. When Sean and I talked earlier, the thing that hit me, he had just become head of growth and revenue at Aztra. And lo and behold, wow, it's an AI company. Go figure, right? But what really got me interested was he's a nerd. He's an engineer. He's a CTO who not only can sell but loves to sell. And so I thought, so with that, I'm going to basically say, okay, how are you going to take that unique unicorn mixture, Sean, and how are you going to make it work at Astra?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Skip. So Astra's a bit unique, and I think part of the reason I wanted to join is a lot of companies are developing AI applications. A lot of companies are service companies focused on integrating applications or integrating AI for outcomes. Astra kind of sits in between that. So at Astra, not only do we have applications that we've developed to achieve AI outcomes, but we have the services team to go ahead and implement them and configure them to be specific for whichever organization we're working with. And initially, we focused on applications that have a lot of overlap with many different industries. So part of what we're doing right now is from a planning demand forecasting perspective, and some of the other applications we're working on right now are around API hardening for microservices, as well as helping IT service operations. So that's kind of where we're getting started and where we've seen the most traction so far, and definitely have a lot more in store based on client demand and things that we've identified through client conversations that we think have overlap in many industries as well.
So your primary revenue generation is through what? Services or product?
Today it's services, and we're in the transition of moving more into product.
Okay. So, I've been doing this a long time, all the way from the fax machine all the way up now to AI. And as I've been with many startups, one of the things that I have learned and experienced is there are a lot of startups that I put them into two categories, right? Especially when it comes to tech. Those that are technology supported services companies, and then those that are service supported technology companies. And what's interesting is the investment community wants service-supported technology companies, and that's what the founders want because that's a 10x multiple typically on an exit. Nobody wants to pay 10x for a technology-supported services company. What's interesting is that if services are required in order for the client to get value out of the product, then you actually never make that transition. You always wind up being a technology-supported services company. Out of those two classifications, are you a technology supported services company, or are you a technology supported, or are you a services supported technology company?
I would say we're the latter classification where you said it's harder to exit, and I think the reason being is a few reasons. Primarily, Astra got its start just doing services, and through a number of client engagements, started to realize that there's product that could overlap with many of their clients to help them all get essentially the same type of delivery and allow us to templatize things to make us not only more effective at how we go about delivering services, but allow the clients to get a faster outcomes. And that's really what it's all about for us is we focus on what we refer to as decision intelligence. That's kind of a marketing term that's going around right now for a lot of the big consumer data platforms. But what that means in its essence to me is getting to outcomes faster, actually providing business value. I think one of the biggest questions you see in the news and when people are purporting this as an AI bubble is where's the ROI? Where are the
Mhm.
outcomes? So that's kind of through the lens with which we focus, and we've found that developing these applications and then allowing our team or a combination of clients team and our team to work through connecting existing systems and existing investments into these platforms we're building to achieve these outcomes with decision intelligence. That seems to be the sweet spot for us. There's a number of reasons why, but I think the biggest is we leverage existing technologies and existing processes, and we overlay or act as an orchestration layer on top with decision intelligence to help people get to outcomes faster. And I think one of the biggest ways you can measure ROI of an AI investment today is actually through productivity gains and through efficiencies and productivity, taking tasks from 30 minutes down to a minute.
So without getting proprietary, can you give us a real example of how this has been deployed and what the result has been?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from the perspective of forecast and demand planning, there's a lot of different sources and feeds that go into that, especially when you're an organization that may have many disparate organizations that you've acquired over time, where then you're having to roll up these projections for the entire company. And being able to do that in a centralized way where you can have models learning from not only historical trends, but third-party signals that could be relevant to their business. So, as an example for let's say retail stores. Retail stores, when they're trying to manage their inventory in the store and they're trying to forecast how much inventory they might need based on foot traffic, there's things we can take into consideration from third party signals like weather or concert events or things like that that we know will either reduce or increase the amount of foot traffic that a store might get, which can then help better predict not only from historical trends and seasonality trends and trends related to different promotions that are being ran for sales, but these third-party signals as well. And being able to do that in a centralized way over, many different stores with millions of SKUs potentially, and being able to harness the power of AI to do that, it has been really good from an outcome perspective and something that's resonating, I would say, very well with retail and CPG clients we work with.
Once you get them excited about this opportunity, now you can go ahead and sell them your solution.
Yeah, so I think the problem statement is already very well understood. There's many technologies that already play in the forecasting and planning space. I think what's interesting about what we're doing, and to answer the other part of your question, you kind of have to meet this whichever client you're working with where they're at in terms of
Mhm.
adoption, whether they're at a crawl phase, a walk phase, or a run phase, and then help guide them on the path towards that ultimate run phase where
So, are you finding that most companies that you're talking to, are they in the crawl, walk, or run stage?
I would say most are in crawl or walk at this point. No one has really bit off the fully automated, maybe minimal human in the loop uh, kind of last stop check. I think everyone is either in the process of exploring or in the middle of trying to get to run, but no one I would say at this point is necessarily at run. I think some of the lower hanging fruit in the AI space today that I see people actually, quote unquote running is more on the customer support, customer service side of things, implementations of chatbots, implementations of voice agents from a customer service standpoint. I think that those are more areas where people have started to run. But when it comes to actual order management, inventory management, things that really could affect your bottom line more so than someone trying to surface some FAQ type question and answers with a chatbot, that the risk is not as much there if you're wrong. So I think that's why
Well,
a
unless you're
lot
Delta
more.
Airlines.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
so I think
Sorry.
that's why a lot more people are still in the crawl and walk phase, because some of the areas we're starting to get into now in terms of where we're promoting AI and where we're seeing advantages, people really want to test and prove that there's a lot of high level of confidence here to minimize the risk of if something was to go wrong.
Well, so we're hearing so many times that most companies aren't getting past the test stage. And what I'm hearing is that it has nothing to do with the capability of the software or the technology. It has everything to do with they just haven't thought it through all the way yet as to what Gartner Group a long time ago coined the phrase total cost of ownership. And I think that can now be applied to total cost of AI, because it isn't just about, I want to build a model or I want to build an agent or I want to build whatever. It's okay, what's the total cost of running that, right? It's going to cost you more depending upon how big you are and how many times you run it and how big the files for tokens and everything else. And you've really got to take all that into consideration, because the worst thing that can happen is that your pilot takes off right? And it goes, wow, it did what we said we were going to do. But nobody did the math until after the pilot, the real math, right? And then they do the math and they go, geez, this is going to take 10 years to get any kind of an ROI out of, right? So when you're having these conversations and just in being able to win deals, what are your primary headwinds?
Yeah, so I think you make a really good point there with TCO and TCO maybe not being well understood and trying to justify the ROI of something. I think that's why some of the applications we built in the areas where we focus are, like I said earlier, areas where we can improve repetitive mundane tasks. That's pretty good to start from an automation
Hmm.
standpoint. But then even better still is how can we use existing investments, existing systems, act as something that integrates those in a centralized way and can be bidirectional such that from a TCO perspective, you're not reinventing the entire wheel or buying a point solution that's disparate and making the problem of silos in IT even worse. You're actually helping solve that problem. There's an old adage around garbage in, garbage out. So the AI
Yeah,
models themselves are only ever as good as the information you feed it. And if it doesn't have a total view of what's going on from the problem you're trying to solve, the outcomes are never going to be as good. So I think
right.
that's why it's really important and why we focus in ensuring that not only do we understand the data sources and the nature of the data sources, but working closely with the different lines of business and the leaders there to make sure that the output at the end is not only something they can use and understand, but something that makes sense from a business justification standpoint of this provides value to us and this is how we leverage it. And I think that's another, advantage of Astra and what we do. And like I said earlier, we use these applications as templates, but we ultimately end up configuring them to be specific to how the business users are going to use them, because the best thing we can do is ensure that on the other end the adoption is very high. We
Hmm.
don't want to create a tool where people don't know how to use it, don't want to use it, doesn't work in the way that their existing workflows work. So there's a lot of work that's done on the discovery front to ensure that what we're proposing is going to work for the end users, the business itself, to get to those outcomes, so that when we talk about improvements and we talk about savings or we talk about increase of revenue, we can ultimately back that up. Because without the adoption and without the integration into existing systems, you're just another technology investment that might, like you said, not be justified in terms of the cost of it.
I suspect that there's AI and the adoption of AI is as much about change management as it is about the technology. And for suspend disbelief, there is an AI role in every company, right? And when you talk, as I look at the marketplace, you have industry, you have company, you have the role, and then you have the person. So let's talk for a minute about the role. Actually, before we get to that, you don't talk like a CTO. You talk like a sales guy, but you are a CTO. Give us just a minute and a half of your background and what I think potentially makes you even the winning edge.
Yeah, it's a great question, Skip. So I have an engineering degree from the University of Iowa out of school. Really wanted to work in renewable energy. Had an opportunity to work for a large commercial developer of solar. Shortly after getting into that role, they initially hired me to be a designer, an estimator of solar sites, and they realized I was pretty good with computers. So I started to do a whole lot of work building a database and reprogramming all our devices on the site so that I could get even more data out of them than state-of-the-art enterprise investments we were making were saying is the only thing available. I'd get on calls with Germany and ask them through all their documents to make sure I'm not missing any data points. And that was when I think I really got down the path of like, oh wow, I really think I like technology more than I like renewable. And I noticed that as I was doing all these fun things and these projects and working with data and doing data analytics to either justify why we were undercharging a customer or justify why we're experiencing less power production because of some type of outage or another. So I could direct people like, hey, I know you're there cleaning the site today. Go to inverter 46, look at string 3. It's not working right. And they'd call me back. How'd you know? Well, I'm looking at the numbers right here. But so it's like
Yeah.
that really got me into it. But and that was the aha moment for me, like, oh, I could totally sell this stuff. Like I love talking about this stuff to anyone who will listen long enough. So that's kind of what got me into the tech sales space. And yeah, I went from there into cybersecurity. And then I've been privileged to work in the AI space since 2020 and really excited about all the work going on there.
I see on LinkedIn all the time and about this new technology for sales assistants and hey, how AI is going to do this and you can automate this and you can automate that. And all I keep thinking to myself is in the next 4 months, that company, which is actually probably a product or ultimately maybe just a feature in an overall ecosystem, is going to be out of business because AI is going to take it because AI is just going to get that good. So what does it take to differentiate in the market today when everybody looks at the horizons are no longer 4 years, 3 years, they're 3 weeks sometimes. How do you differentiate?
Yeah, so the biggest differentiator is because, like you said, AI helps you get 80, 90% of the way there. The closing that gap to that last 10%, that's where the value exists. That's domain expertise, that's knowledge and experience around how something needs to work, how it needs to function, how it needs to integrate, how it makes people's lives easier, the end user experience of things. Those are the ways that when you can dictate to AI that it needs to look and feel like this with this intention, with this outcome, with these expectations for future integrations, when you design with that end goal in mind and you have the domain expertise and experience to help it get over the hump of that last 20 to 10% that it probably can't do without you being very specific as to how you want it, and having a little bit of debugging know-how as well to go test it and make sure it works. I think I spend more of my time on the debugging and testing and how things look and feel to make sure that it's going to be user friendly, more so on the actual coding part, because the coding has gotten so amazing from an AI standpoint. I think some of what I spend time on coding is just there's a tendency with large language models today that help with coding to kind of create a spider web where it'll have many different things instead of, hey, maybe we can do this in a more composable way where we just kind of all reference back to the same thing as opposed to making unique functions for every little feature. Let's do this in a little more intelligent way. But even having that understanding, you can go back and instruct it to do that, and it will. So I think it's just a matter of not only knowing what you want as the outcome, but knowing how to work with it so that it gets to that outcome in an intelligent way, and then having domain experience and expertise to know that what you're building is adding value, will be used, and will be adopted. That's the biggest thing, I think.
It's interesting. A previous guest of mine, John Sirakis, owns an agency, digital agency business. And I had another guest that I'm about to shoot a podcast with who actually in our pre-discussion told me the exact same thing. And I'm seeing a pattern here. And I think the pattern is, by definition, originality doesn't scale. I could have 40 companies all in the same industry. And the role of AI in those companies, while to your point, they all function, they all have the same sort of functions that they perform and the roles that they perform, but they're all going to have a little bit of a difference. It's that final mile. It's what they talk about in telco a lot. The final mile of being able to light up a building. It's that final mile. I think what I'm hearing is there is a trend now that says my differentiator is the final mile, because AI makes everybody the same. AI makes everybody operationally excellent. Reesum and Tracy wrote a book 25 years ago called The Discipline of Market Leaders, where if you wanted to be a leader in a market, you had to pick one of three disciplines: technological innovation, operational excellence, or customer intimacy. And you had to be really good at the other two, but only to the extent that they supported the primary. Well, I think what's happened with AI is that operational excellence is now available to everybody. You can now, within your own company, be operationally excellent. And so if you're on the sell side, then what you do and what 20 of your other competitors do are all basically about 80% to 90% the same thing. There might be a little bit different in the how. So what's the difference? What is the difference that your difference makes? And it is you. It is the human. It is the discernment. It is the domain knowledge. It is the specificity that you can get to, right? And so what am I buying? Technologically, you guys can pretty much deliver the same thing. But what I'm looking for is somebody who it now becomes a risk issue. I'm looking for the persons that I perceive are going to do the best job of de-risking this change that we're doing. And so even though it's so funny, is AI going to replace people? Some, sure, it's going to do that. It's going to replace roles and it's going to replace functions. But in reality, it's not going to display. In fact, it will actually be better because it will now accentuate your unique value proposition. You don't have to now compete necessarily on technology anymore. The technology is available. What you're now competing is, I'm better, I'm different than the other guys. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that, Skip, and I think it's why, like to your point, I don't view AI in the short term, midterm as replacing people. I view it as augmenting people and making them more efficient, not focus on such mundane tasks and get to display that originality, get to display that reason why they're there, the reason why they have institutional knowledge. And that's kind of why I mentioned earlier, it's so important in our model to ensure outcomes by working with the lines of business and the actual users, because they're a lot of the times the ones who have the institutional knowledge of, oh well, we have to do it this way at this closeout because of this system and that. The systems we build for people and how we integrate with things and how we put models on top of them, if they don't know all these little nuances and other things that are essentially institutional knowledge done by the people in the day to day every day, it'll never get to that final mile. So that's how you get to that final mile, is by trying to do a knowledge transfer of not only the organization itself and how the organization works, but how the individual roles work within the organization and how all those puzzle pieces fit together. Because without that level of understanding, you are doomed to fail. It's going to be another failed AI pilot. And I think that's why I'm so excited to be in this space and have a background in systems engineering, to help guide people towards essentially the light of, we can get to that final mile, but we need to do it together. It'll never happen. If someone comes in and says, I'm going to do this, our company can do this, we'll get you these outcomes, and we don't need you to do it, we'll just do it ourselves. Like there's no way it's going to be a significant outcome, because only the business themselves truly understands their own business. And without
Mm-hmm.
having that level of partnership and level of co-development, I just don't really see how you get to a meaningful outcome. Maybe you can have some quick wins here and there, but the understanding the DNA of the business itself and how the different roles function to make the business it is, without that level of understanding, you'll never have a meaningful AI production system.
I totally agree, and I think that you almost want to slow things down, right? So if somebody comes in, and depending upon where are you, right? I have 5 questions that I always ask, and anytime anything changes, and sometimes even when it doesn't, just if enough time has elapsed, I ask all 5 again. And one of the more important questions that you have to ask is, where are you in the process? Where are you in your evolution? And then, if you're selling, the equally important question is, where are we?
Mm-hmm.
Are we the 10th voice you're listening to, or are we the first voice you're listening to? Because where you are in their cycle, okay, is extremely important, because that will tell you, how do I need to proceed, right? And I can't, how do I, am I teaching them and setting the bar, or am I late? And if I'm late, then rule number 1 when you're late is slow it down. You got to have the time to catch up, and you're not, because they're ahead, right? So you've got to slow things down when you're selling, and you're and talking to companies about what it is that they need, and how do they need to, and where are they in their process. Let me back up. Do you think that we're still, as a buyer of AI, that we're still in the, when you look at the adoption curve, right? You got innovators, early adopters, early followers, and then late followers, and it goes down. Are we still in the innovator stage? Are the innovators the one right now that are buying, or are you finding even early adopters? And let me make sure that everybody on
Yeah,
my
we're going
definition,
slightly up. I think we're just getting past innovators into early adopters.
because innovators don't need references. What they need is a logical explanation, and the corollary to that is they've had the problem for a long time and they know it. And so I want to try something, right? So they're your innovators, right? It's your innovators that now support the early adopters, because the early adopters, they've maybe have had the problem for a little while, but they need more proof. And your proof is in your innovators. So you're the way that I look at it, when you're entering a new market, you'll darn near give it away to innovators if you get other things in return, because it's your innovators that will help you sell everybody else. And you think that we're in that we're a little bit down here where we're going up a little bit.
Starting to
So
go up.
are you finding that people are saying, I want a case study? Give me a case study about how this has worked for us. How many of nobody's done it. There are 10 companies that have done it because it's been around for a year. So, that's how I guess you determine whether they're an early adopter or an innovator.
We've been sharing a lot of case studies lately. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I think, just referencing my own journey, back in 2020, I primarily worked with innovators. And now since ChatGPT has been out for a few years now almost,
Hmm.
I think that's why we're getting into that early adopter stage. People wanted to look and see, okay, this cool chatbot thing, maybe it gives me an interesting recipe or writes me an interesting song, but people have started to realize now that they can reasonably apply this to real business use cases. And I think that's why now people have, they're kind of done waiting and watching on the sidelines and they're ready to get into it. They just need a little bit more guidance on where to start to show that, where they're starting makes sense from an investment standpoint. I mean, probably one of the worst things you could do as a business leader is go request a bunch of money to go do a project and then have it be a flop, right? Because then, all future AI projects after that are going to be either heavily scrutinized or just a non-starter. So I think that's kind of where we're at now is everyone's ready to jump in, but they're being very cautious and, to be expected, quite frankly, because they're putting their neck on the line to say, I want to do what the innovators did. I'm just nervous and want to be, not necessarily convinced, but like you said, de-risk my expected motion. And I think a lot of what people are doing right now is coming up with lists of, hey, these are all the areas we think AI could help, and we're trying to determine within this list which ones are the easiest and which ones will have the most impact. And is there a Venn diagram of that somewhere in the middle where
Right.
it's easy
Right.
and has a lot of
Yeah.
impact? Because that's the
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
risky one that I can
Right.
go to the board and say, look at all this success. Let's keep going on other ones.
Well, if you've got data, and to your point earlier on, it's been around since even before me, and that is data in, garbage out. So when you look at making informed decisions, the first thing you have to look at is, what data do you currently have? Is it in any kind of a real, clean format that we can get to? Because even AI could answer that question for the organization, and that is, where, if you really have the data and understand our business, then where can we get the greatest the greatest return? It's funny, in any business, if you're looking for investment internally, I'm talking about corporate America, it really is a very simple formula. It's really two things: this plus this equals this. The math plus the personal commitment equals investment. If the math doesn't work, and a lot of them stop at the math because they're not doing the math correctly, in my opinion. But let's say if the math doesn't work, and you go in as a head of logistics, or a CRO, or a CMO, or CTO, you say, I really got to have this. I got to have this in order for me to meet my KPIs, right? And I got to have it. Okay, well, the math doesn't work, so you're not going to get it. Or if you go in and you say, what, the math really works, and it shows up, right? But then you're saying, yeah, I'd like to have this. This would be a nice to have. I think this would be important, but it's not critical to me hitting my KPIs. You're not going to get the investment. Both have to be present. And so when you're talking to companies, And are you talking ultimately to the person that has the not only the responsibility but also the authority, or are you talking mostly to those that have the responsibility?
It's a mix of both. Really, just
Okay.
depends on the nature of the engagement. Ultimately, I would like to have engagement with both levels, not only responsibility but authority, and help
Well, how do you
responsibility craft a
how do
message to
how,
get
how
to
but how
authority.
but how oh okay so you
I
don't want
help
to
them
talk
do
to
the math.
authority.
I'll help
You
them do
help
the
them do
math.
the math. Okay. Okay. But do you also close that if they have a business problem that has to be solved, they can't solve it without AI, and it for
Or it
whatever
would just
the
take too
conditions
many
may be.
people, so it's too
That's
too expensive. It's too prohibitively expensive.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that it may be an opportunity that I want to explore, that I want to take advantage of, but I can't because it makes a 3x increase in headcount. But if I had AI, I could do it with no increase in headcount, ostensibly, right? Maybe some OpEx, not even CapEx, but some OpEx. And so therefore the return, the ongoing return is exponentially greater, right?
That's the
And so
key to it.
you work with the responsible person, but to make sure that the math works. But are you hearing that that they're making their own strong case that says, I have to have this in order to be able to hit the goals that you want me to hit?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things going on there. I think not only do we want to help the individual and whatever their responsibility may be from a KPI standpoint, helping them get a bonus, whatever it may be, but there's also tying it back to the bottom line of the organization and
Yeah.
showing from a, either minimization of costs or increase of revenue why this is important to the overall business. And oh, by the way, you get what you want to help you hit your KPI, but this is how we're going to go sell it to the person to approve it is this is how it helps the overall business and these are the returns we get. And by the way, we've been wanting this functionality for a long time because if our team is able to do this, we get X level of efficiency, which helps us hit these metrics. But maybe they don't even want to disclose that because then they'll get their new metrics for the next year set even higher, right? So it's
Yeah.
helping them navigate that in terms of how does it help the overall business? Is this
Well, I think
important?
that's the
Yeah.
issue. KPI may have been too much on the personal level. Maybe I was really referring to OKRs, right, where they've got operating goals that they've got to be able to hit, which by definition, by extension, will wind up helping the business. And whether it's private or whether it's public, it doesn't really matter. One way or another, somebody's going to make more money. So what's interesting then is where do you see even what you're doing in your business? Look at you've been doing this since 2020, 5, 6 years now. Okay. We're talking about an acceleration curve that we've never, ever seen, ever. Right. It's amazing the things that we're reading about now where agents are talking to agents and becoming, basically, and keep in mind, all of this stuff still originated from people. Right. And so whatever the DNA of models that can take over the world is, yeah, well, it's Pogo. I've seen the enemy, and it is me. We created it, right? So where do you see all this stuff going in the next? Normally you would say in the next 5 years, in the next year and a half. Where do you see this stuff going?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I was watching a video last night actually about a lead researcher around AI safety, and he made the comment that even just being on this call with you right now, I may not even know what state of the art is anymore because there could have been a new model that came out where now that's state of the art. So I think you need to have curiosity and the desire to continue learning because as these developments keep getting better and better, the capability is going to get better, which in turn allows the use cases you can apply it to get better. So I think a year from now, some of the things I may be talking about in terms of use cases we're focusing on today may not be as attractive as use cases we have the ability to focus on tomorrow because those use cases in that Venn diagram could then become easier and have more impact. And that's the areas where ultimately we want to focus with businesses such that they can implement AI in a way that has the best possible outcome for them. Because if that's not the way they're focusing on it, their competition is. So, in order to have a competitive advantage in the age of AI, You need to not only continuously innovate and be curious and learn, but try to understand your business where the not only the easy problems are to solve, but the hard problems are to solve. Understand what goes into it in order to be able to solve it, and then be ready to move quickly when a capability comes out that says, oh, now we can go attack this thing we thought was going to be really hard because it's not that hard anymore. And we're going to have dramatic impact on our overall organization.
Well, it's funny, being agile now takes on a whole new definition.
It really does.
It's, you have it in software, obviously, but now it's you've got to be in a constant state of adaptation, right? Based upon, okay, what we were able to charge $40,000 for now, I can get in 10 minutes with Claude Code or whatever. And so now that's not it. Well, what's the next thing? And I think, to your point, curiosity, I love that, because I think that curiosity has been dying in grade schools and middle school and high school, because if you've always got everything curated to you, so that your attention is always about what somebody else thinks is important, your curiosity muscle dies. And I remember talking to a guy that was a chairman of a school board 20 years ago, where we lived, and we were talking about what's the number one skill that needs to be taught. And this was 20 years ago, so AI wasn't even here yet. What's the number one skill that needs to be taught? And it was discernment, because even at that point, information was too easy to get. And so, and we weren't even, beaten about the head and shoulders with it as we are now. But even then it was discernment. And then just, I think as little as maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I think we saw, especially with COVID and the lockouts, you saw almost the death of curiosity, because everybody was relegated to their screen and to their smartphone. And so one of the things that I look at now is that now that all these schools are banning smartphones at school, so now kids have to be curious, right? You have to be able to develop that muscle that says, I constantly want to know. Because if you don't have curious people, you have the death of AI. Nobody's going to care about using it unless you're curious, right? So it's interesting that you should mention curiosity, because I think that as we look at society in general, we've got to continue to foster it. And figure out what's next. But if you are not, I was reading something that said 5-year business plans are now gone, because businesses are going to be they're going to be seismically disrupted. Industries are going to be seismically disrupted in 2 years, 3 years. And I think that who is it that wins? Getting back to our original point, it's the human in the loop. It's the person. You become the UVP that your competitor can't match. So
I
I think
think,
it's good.
no,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's never been a better time in the history of the world to start your own business. There's
Mm.
so many things you can do from the perspective of using AI to help you make a website, whatever it may be, right? Like the ability to get started and
Or to
basically
be a
do it all
consultant.
yourself. Yeah, or to be a
Yeah.
consultant. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
do what an army of consultants used to be able to do 90% of the way there, and
Yeah.
however long it takes ChatGPT to think about how many documents you fed it at the same time. But
Oh,
yeah, I'll never be able to have every book someone's written stored in my head, but I can make an AI model reference all of that information. And if I'm able to ask interesting questions of it, and if I'm able to be curious about it, and I'm able to frame it in a way where these are the things I'm trying to get out of it, and then to that discernment piece, do I trust this output? Do I know enough about this subject matter to be able to say definitively these answers are correct? Because at the end of the day, it's just using probability to return the most likely result, not necessarily what is factual or actual. So I think that, you know, when you were saying you need curiosity for AI to continue to thrive and people to use it, I view it a little bit differently. I view it where there's two ways to use AI. There's a way to use AI where you just give it a bunch of stuff and it gives you an answer. You say, all right, that's the answer. And the other way to use AI is to say, how did it come up with that answer? Why did it make that answer? Do I trust this answer? Are there other things I can ask to ensure that this answer is a good one? And it's the
Well,
same thing about people
yeah,
using a computer, right? Like a lot of people when they were kids, they're given a computer, they just go, they play on their computer. I took the computer apart. That was one of the first things I did.
of course you did. Of course you did. Well, I think it's interesting because I think that if you're curious, or if you're not innately curious, then you get an answer, and you got to do what Ronald Reagan said: trust but verify. We had a guy that a company I was with a long time ago doing software databases long before it was software databases, desktop software databases, and he could write a proposal in an hour from scratch, and he was brilliant at it. So after about the fifth one that he wrote, I just said to him, I said, you know what, I got to tell you, God bless the authors, because they make editors of us all. What is AI? AI is authorship at scale. Okay. It is about I can have a conversation with somebody, and if it's a really good AI sales assistant, it will produce a really good follow-up email in a minute. I do a quick couple of little tiny, because if I got to spend all my time editing something, I might as well just author it. So that's where the value. But if I basically correct two things and I can send it in a minute or 2 minutes, that's huge. And that's not just huge from the standpoint of it can do that. It can do that, but I can't, right? I suck at note taking. If I'm listening, if you're note taking, it's just the same thing as listening to respond instead of listening to learn. If I'm taking a note, I just miss what you said. It's like listening to a Robin Williams skit, right? You wind up laughing at joke number one, and you just miss joke number 2, 3, and 4 because he comes so fast that you were laughing and thinking about the first one that you missed the next three, right? In sales. So that's, to me, I mean, I'm 68 years old. So the fact that I can do what I'm doing is only made available to me through AI. That is the promise. And so if you have curiosity and you still have energy and you can get around and you still feel like you have something to say, AI will enable it for you. And that's it.
Absolutely.
So what is you're just now, as a parting comment to our viewers, you're just now uh, getting into this role, right? Now, you obviously, not that you're into this, but you're into this role. You've got challenges coming. You want to grow. What's your number one challenge to grow?
I think one of the biggest challenges so far has been trying to help the organization standardize a little bit more in terms of how we develop content and how we develop different materials. And we've come a long way around that, but then also standardizing how we present and implement these applications, because that's our head start, and ensuring that we're doing things that become repetitive, things that are repeatable. And if we can do that and we can show not only to our clients, but to our technology partners that we work with that, hey, we're a small but mighty team, but what we do is very repeatable and we get results quickly. And that's why you should partner with us or work with us. I think that ultimately is going to help us achieve the leverage and scale that we need to be successful in the long run.
So I lied. Because of what you just said, I've got another question to follow up on, and that is, you are small, and it's in a relatively nascent industry, right? Because what you're selling didn't exist 2 years ago or 3 years ago to be able to do it at scale. And you're going after clients that are much, much bigger than you are, and probably against
Absolutely.
much bigger competitors, right? The big guys that can go do this. So you're small. So how does David beat Goliath?
AI.
Okay.
Using AI from the outset, using it in everything we do, using it to enable us, using it to make our processes better, using it to help us achieve outcomes faster, being smarter with how we scale and changing our delivery model if needed to be more in an outcome-based model instead of a TNM model, instead of butts and seats, so that we're aligned with the client we work with and we both have skin in the game to get to the outcome. I think that's how we, beat Goliath as David. But I think AI is the great equalizer. I think David just got some big stilts.
Yeah, yeah, and really good aim,
Yeah,
which obviously helps. So you mentioned, though, which was interesting, that it is all about your ability to utilize the tools, right? when I was with Growth Acceleration Partners doing nearshore software development, I would tell prospects all the time, look, in this business, we all do about 90% the same thing. So the real question is, what is that 10% that we do that is different? And then most importantly, how much a difference will that difference make to you? Because if that difference doesn't make any difference to you, then my being 10% more, because we're a premium shop, isn't going to fly. Right. But if it does make a big difference, then it's there. So your 10%, and there are a lot of companies that can do what you're doing or more emerging. Your 10% that you're different is what?
Our 10% is that we're different is a couple of things. So we have different leaders over the individual verticals that we focus on that have been in the space and have been in roles like a CDO or a CTO where they have a level of understanding and they have that last 10%, that last mile. They have the experience and the expertise, and they've been innovators in this space so that now we can help the early adopters with innovator leaders that have done this. And then also individuals like myself, the CEO and owner of our company. We both have engineering backgrounds and approach everything from a systems engineering standpoint to help connect the dots to make sure that what we're doing and how we're proposing it will get us to those desired outcomes, and then leveraging our subject matter experts to work with the lines of business to ensure that we're aware of everything we need to get there. And I think that's kind of the winning combination is looking at it from start to finish from a systems approach, and then having subject matter experts get you that extra 10%. That's I think our advantage. That's our winning edge.
Great line to end on. Sean, I really enjoyed the conversation. This has been good. It's been enlightening. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I did.
I think that our audience is going to get some real nuggets out of this, and we will continue to follow you. We may have to do another one a year from now, and you'll be in the car wash business or something, being driven by AI, and that'll be probably par for the course.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, Skip. This was a ton of fun. Really appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hold on.
you're welcome.